I know it's been a little while since we had a video uploaded here on the channel. I do apologize. Last week, I was traveling with the family, trying to get a little family vacation in. I did learn a valuable lesson while doing that. First, if you're gonna have a day out at the beach with a little more tropical weather than what you're used to, think twice before you ask the 8-year-old to be the one to spray your back with sunscreen. Lesson number 2, if you're not familiar with the area and raiding, consider whether or not it's a good idea to jump into a raid lobby when you see 4 trainers present in the raid. Rip that raid pass. But we are here. We are back now in the Master League in Go Battle League. We have transitioned out of the Ultra League and now currently active in the Go Battle League in Season 2. We have the Master League and Premier Cup running. Now, this set of videos, we're going to be taking a look at Groudon with Fire Punch. Previously, in Season 1 and in preseason, Groudon was not the most common Pokemon in the Master League. The reason being, Groudon only had access to very expensive 1-bar charge moves, things like Solar Beam, Earthquake, Fire Blast. And for that reason, it didn't have a bait option to break down shields, so it was really difficult unless it was in the back. When shields were down as a closer, Groudon really had a hard time succeeding in the Master League. But now with the introduction of Fire Punch, it now has that cheaper bait potential move that's going to enable it to bait out shields from the opponent and then hit with those super hard moves. Typically, Earthquake is the additional move that you'll add with Fire Punch. Now, because Fire Punch was introduced as basically a special event or a legacy move, it was only introduced during the Throwback challenge. I went ahead and spent one of my elite charge TMs for it. I thought because of the prevalence of such things as Melmetal and Dialga in the Master League, a lot of folks running either of those Pokemon, some folks running both of those Pokemon on their team, that having a very solid counter to both of those Pokemon in the form of Groudon, having access to ground type moves that would be hitting for super effective damage into those steel types, as well as for a Pokemon like Melmetal being able to hit for super effective with Fire Punch, I thought it was going to be a good opportunity to test it out in the Master League. So in this set of videos, we're going to be taking a look at my first foray, my first step into the Master League, running Groudon with Fire Punch. Let's get into it. Welcome back to the channel, trainers. My name is Oro Chris. I am your catching coach. And as we can see, the team currently consisting of Groudon, Dialga, and Mewtwo. Now, Mewtwo, with the introduction of Psystrike last season, Mewtwo is now a super solid pick in the Master League. One of the best safe switches in the game, totally lethal, very hard to counter quickly enough. And then Dialga also probably, arguably, the additional tied for or best safe switch in the game. So we've got both of those Pokemon in the back with Groudon in the lead. Really, with Groudon, with access to Fire Punch, you're in a pretty solid position, except for when you find Pokemon like Kyogre, going to be hitting for super effective damage and going to be resisting Fire Punch, as well as your true bane of your existence, running Fire Punch and Earthquake, Dragonite. So definitely going to swap out of those 2 particular matchups. Everything else, Groudon, because of its huge base stats and access to Mudshot as the fast move, which charges energy very quickly, really it can hold its own against most other options or most other Pokemon in the Master League. Now, for my Best Buddy boost, I do have Dialga in the Best Buddy position. The reason being the importance of that breakpoint in the mirror match versus other Dialga. Now, if you're not familiar with what IVs are necessary to ensure that you tie or beat out those opponents' Dialga, I will put a link up to a video where we covered that particular topic here on the channel, as well as our previous coverage for Dialga. Very important Pokemon in the Master League. You definitely want to have one on your team or know how to counter it. And that's why we're considering running Groudon with Fire Punch for that reason. Now, as I said, these are videos from last week when I was on vacation. We have moved up a little bit in the rating system since that time, but these were when we were first getting into the Master League. So we have got someone from rank 9 with a random assortment of letters for names. So we will not try to hazard an attempt to pronounce that. But as we mentioned, we have got the hard counter of Kyogre, so we're going to immediately swap out and get hard countered again with the Rhyperior. Now, typically, if they swap quickly enough, you'll be able to get off one Iron Head, and then you'll go down before you can get to the second, which is exactly what happens here. So as the Groudon, or as the Rhyperior user rather, just shield that one Iron Head and you are off to the races, because that Mud Slap damage just does so much damage into a Steel type like Dialga. So here, because of the low energy, we're going to try to get away with just a Fire Punch. Don't want to burn too much energy going with the Earthquake. And now we've got Kyogre coming back in, so we're immediately going to swap. Now, an interesting pick and something else, in addition to Dragonite that we just mentioned, Gyarados is also a very tough matchup for Groudon. The reason being, as a Flying type Pokemon, it's going to have immunity tier resistance to those ground type attacks, and is also going to have access, or also going to resist the fire type attack of Fire Punch. In prior seasons before Fire Punch came out, when you had two moves on Groudon, my consideration was to recommend Solar Beam, and the reason being you would at least be able to get a neutral hit into a Pokemon like Gyarados. So here we're going to be coming in, launch that Psy Strike, going to be very close coming into this second matchup. We've got Fire Punch here at the wire. If I can get this off, get a little bit more chip down before a Surf comes through, we'll be able to pull out that win, which we do there barely. So definitely nail biter. I do like Gyarados in the Master League. He is also a top pick in the Premier Cup. If you're not familiar with the Premier Cup, we'll be covering that a little bit later in some separate videos, but definitely an interesting pick there because of its water typing. It's going to resist the other preeminent Pokemon in the Premier Cup, that being Metagross with Steel type attacks. Now on Dialga, I personally prefer Thunder, and the reason being for these types of matchups against these Steel types, having something that's going to be hitting for neutral damage into a Metagross, into a Melmetal, into Heatran, for example. They're, as a Steel type, they're going to be resisting Steel type attacks, and they're going to be resisting Dragon type attacks. So I think that it's really important to have something for a neutral hit, as well as, because of the prevalence of Pokemon like Groudon, you're going to have a lot of Kyogre. You're going to have something that's going to be hitting for super effective damage, a little bit less of an option, or a little bit better option than some of the alternatives. In either case, on Dialga, I would definitely run Iron Head. It's personal preference on whether or not you would then go with the second move being Draco Meteor or Thunder. So here, not the best position. Groudon has access to a neutral hit into the Dragon-type Pokemon of Giratina Origin form with that ground-type attack, but fire-type moves are going to be resisted. Here it's questionable, probably could Mudshot down, so we'll use the shield there. Gonna go for the Ice Beam. Now, Ice Beam, because Dialga is a Steel type and a Dragon type, the Steel typing is going to resist Ice type attacks. The Dragon typing is going to take super effective damage from an Ice type attack, and as a result, you're able to negate those two and hit for neutral damage with an Ice type move. Whereas Psy Strike, even though it's a more damage per energy move, it's going to be resisted by the Steel typing. That's why I opted for the Ice Beam there. So we're able to pull out the win by the narrowest of margins. Again, very close matches. GG's to the opponent. And now we've got constant FOMO, fear of missing out. Ain't that the truth? These constant events that we've got going on with Pokemon Go are also something that I've struggled with, the FOMO. So a very interesting pick, Reshiram. I have not seen many of these in the Master League since it was introduced a couple of weeks ago. So it's nice to see a trainer trying out something new. Because of our Steel typing, we are going to be having one of its typing resisting Dragon type damage. Dragon types normally are super effective into other dragons. So for Melmetal, or for Dialga rather, it's going to take neutral damage from Dragon Breath, whereas Reshiram is taking super effective from Dialga in return. So again, we've got a Steel type. While I like to run Thunder, I think it's a very helpful move. We're going to go for that superpower. Now that is one of those moves that debuffs the opponent, so both attack and defense fall. So now we're going to go into our Groudon. Better option. Typically, the recommended moveset on Zekrom on the opponent's side is Dragon Breath for the fast move, and then Crunch and Wild Charge. If you're running Wild Charge into a ground type like Groudon, not going to be using that, so they've really only got access to their cheaper, more energy efficient bait move, that being Crunch. So not as strong of an option for that matchup against a Groudon. And we are able to pull out the win there. So right now we are 3 out of 5 in this set of battles. Now, I will say this. I was running Ice Beam on Mewtwo during this set of battles. I have since transitioned into Focus Blast. The reason being I wanted to have something that was like a nuke option into Steel types that if they don't shield, lights out, it's over. And it has really been working out well. So if you've got a Mewtwo in the Master League and you've got a Psystrike on it already, I would strongly recommend considering going with Focus Blast, or potentially, if you want to use the other TM, going with Shadow Ball. That is also a highly recommended option. Psystrike and Shadow Ball. In either case, I personally would recommend Psystrike over Shadow Ball if you've got access to 2 different Mewtwo and you don't want to have to use a Elite Charge TM to get both moves on the same Pokemon. So as we see, we got Palkia coming in. They swap out to mirror into their Dialga. Now here I'm hoping to draw the shields. We do not get the shield. That's why I went with the Iron Head, because I probably could get to 2 charge moves with it being Iron Head. With them not charging, I would have preferred to probably have used Thunder if it was going to come down to the wire, but we were able to get the knockout regardless. So here, Iron Head into a water type, not going to be the best option for us, but they do shield it. And now we have got Draco Meteor probably coming in. Yes, which is going to one-shot virtually everything. They do get the attack fall, and if we can get to this, oh, cannot get to this Earthquake. Palkia as a dragon and water type, it's going to doubly resist Fire Punch. So even though it was low health, Fire Punch was not going to do enough being doubly resisted. It was only going to do about 40% of its normal amount of damage against a Pokemon that has in essence immunity to your resistance. If you're not familiar with the levels of resistance and type effectiveness and things like that, we did cover those varying levels of type effectiveness in a separate video. I put a link up to that here in the corner. So we've got Dialga again, loving that Thunder, having something to hit for neutral damage into Melmetal. Now, in a perfect world, it's hard to time it. It's better to launch the Thunder in the matchup against Melmetal after they've launched one superpower, because they've already debuffed themselves, which means that Thunder is going to do much more damage because of the, I believe, 2-stage defense drop from superpower. But that oftentimes will mean that they will hold on to their shields, or they will bait with Rock Slide, and if they get you too low, then you're not going to have an opportunity to launch that charge move when they do launch the superpower later on. So you try to time it right, get it after the first superpower, but in certain matchups, certain times, it's just safer to get the energy used and not try to perfectly maximize it. So here against Metagross, either move is going to be hitting for super effective damage. If they're going to shield, you want to use the less costly as far as energy is concerned move. Here we've got one shield remaining, so we're going to block this Meteor Mash, get to that Earthquake, and it is going to be lights out for this Metagross. Now Metagross currently, during the Kyurem raids, a great pick for teams to be using because of that Steel type, and going to be resisting Ice type attacks, going to be resisting Dragon type attacks, so very solid option there indeed. So we do manage to go 4 out of 5 in that set. Was happy with that result. I wish they would get rid of these starter Pokemon in the rewards. They said that they were going to do it. I don't know when the dates were when they were going to have that as a special incentive, because I was not having any luck with it. So that was Groudon with Fire Punch. Very solid option in the Master League. Currently, I've been seeing a lot of Melmetal and a lot of folks testing out Zekrom, as well as the ever-present Dialga. And for those reasons, Groudon having that immunity to resistance to electric type attacks from Pokemon like Zekrom, as well as having access to super effective damage into Steel types and electric types, overall very solid pick currently in the Master League. Now, as far as additional Pokemon to work with it, Groudon's hardest counter is going to be for sure Kyogre, as well as Palkia. Palkia has a very solid counter in the form of Togekiss, and then Togekiss, because of its just huge charm damage, does very well, or at least can be a check into, it does ultimately lose the matchup, but it can be a solid check into a Pokemon like Kyogre. From what I've seen on other folks' teams online, a lot of folks are leading with Groudon, the reason being Mudshot charges energy so quickly, so it's a very effective move to be paired with a cheaper charge move like Fire Punch, and then you can have that shield baiting option, put on a lot of shield pressure early on, and also it has very few hard counters. Kyogre and Palkia, for example, being very tough matchups, as well as Dragonite, but other than that, it can do a really solid neutral damage into a lot of Pokemon in the Master League meta. And by running it in the lead position, that gives you the opportunity to have a very solid safe switch in the form of Mewtwo, or for example, Dialga, as very solid picks in those regards. I do want to say thank you for sticking around until the end of the video. If you're interested in Pokemon Go, competitive PvP, and basically anything Pokemon related, consider subscribing. And as always, happy catching.